it got to a point where the frustration just was too much for me, and I had to make some decisions and make some changes. And so,
Well, I think you
I
find yourself, Chad, to add to what you're saying, you find
yeah,
yourself in a position that a lot of healthcare providers are in, uh, and also a lot of our patients and clients are in. We know, most people understand what it takes to maintain a healthy weight, but like you mentioned, life happens, and
that's it.
especially like in your position, Dr. Woolner, like you're a practice owner, you're a business owner, you own multiple businesses, you take care of patients, you take care of a lot of different things, and it can happen. Like life happens pretty fast, but it's you know knowing how to take care of your health and actually doing it can be a challenge at times, very
Yeah,
challenging. And I would say also, especially for healthcare providers that have to wear so many hats, it's pretty easy to kind of slip into that. Um, and that's why I think this story is even more so important and relevant, because I think so many people can relate to where you are.
yeah, absolutely. And it very much is that, that cliche analogy that we always use and talk about the, oxygen mask on the airplane. You got to put yours on first before you put on your child's oxygen mask. People will use that, but it really is true, as cliche as it might sound, that you as the individual practitioner, you have to be at a good place. In fact, I saw um, a clip on social media. I think it was that guy Zuby. He was a pretty outspoken social media influencer during the pandemic and everything, and was just a breath of fresh air in terms of his rational approach to everything. And one of the things that he recently was advocating was, he was saying a lot of people, when they look at like the hierarchy of things that they want to do in life, whether it's they want to grow their business or they want to improve their relationship, they want to improve their mental health, they want to improve their physical health. He said, he made a really strong argument, and I would agree with him. He said, if you will focus on your physical health first, the rest of those things will largely fall into play. They will, you will be in such a better place in terms of your own individual resourcefulness and or state of being able to make the necessary changes or approach and tackle the challenges that you need to tackle. You'll be so much better equipped when your health is in a better state. And I couldn't agree more. And that's the thing, as practitioners, I think, again, like you said, Andrew, is that we have to realize that patients are looking to you for leadership. They're looking to you to assist them, and you're going to be at a really difficult. You're going to have a difficult challenge on your hands to be able to help lead patients if you yourself are not where you ideally want or need to be. And there's going to be a certain level of incongruency. And to quote Dr. Patrick Gentempo, he's a very well-known kind of thought leader in the chiropractic profession. He said, contradiction leads to destruction. And he says, the greater the contradiction, the greater the destruction. And I couldn't agree more with that. That's exactly what we're talking about here. And so, were you going to say something, Andrew?
Yeah, this all makes sense, and so I want to kind of bring it into where you are today. So you went from close to 200 pounds, and then how much do you weigh now?
I hover right at around 165. That was my goal weight. I had set for the year 2023. I had set by the end of the year I wanted to reach a goal weight of 165 pounds and be at approximately about 15% body fat. And that's where we're at today. Yeah, so close to 40 pounds.
And this happened really pretty relatively quickly. I see you on a regular basis, and I remember seeing you in person, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's a different person. It actually happened pretty quickly. And maybe walk people through. So you lost a total of what, 35 pounds?
Yeah, yeah,
Roughly.
yeah, roughly.
So now, so Zerona is FDA cleared for fat loss.
Yep.
So walk us through, like, and you have a Zerona laser in your clinic, but walk us through some of the things that you did to lose that 35 pounds so quickly. I imagine it wasn't just the Zerona laser that did
Right.
it. And granted, you see a lot of people with less inches and less fat after using a Zerona, but walk us through like what your strategy was.
Well, it's funny when you ask that, Andrew, because people would ask, and my like almost dismissive knee jerk response was very like somewhat thoughtless, and I need to like stop. I need to get out of that habit of responding that way, because it was like, I don't know, eat less and move more, when in reality that's not the real answer. That's a very, again, like I said, very cavalier, careless, thoughtless answer to, I think, oftentimes a sincere question from people, right? And so the answer now I can tell people loud and clear, and we'll kind of go macro and then a little bit more micro in terms of, and this is, again, whether you're a practitioner listening to this or a patient listening to this wanting to know, like, okay, how do we do this, right? Number one, recognize that you're going to get so many different opinions out there to the point where it drives people crazy. So much conflicting and contradictory information when it comes to weight loss. And so hopefully you can recognize that, number one, what I'm going to be sharing here, what we're going to be sharing here, is based off of kind of foundational universal principles. And then from there, we can go into some more of the specific tactics in terms of what we did and what I did. I say we because it really truly is a lot of what we preach with our practitioners in terms of the mindset, the philosophy, the principles, and then the protocols, putting those into play and putting those into action, really, again, trying to practice what we preach. So I would say kind of from a mile up, in our program that we use with practitioners, we teach and advocate what we call the 5 fundamentals of health. And this is kind of a foundational framework. We call them the health fundamentals, for patients to adopt and start incorporating into their life to kind of maintain proper health. And when I stood back and really looked at what it was that I was doing, I was like, that's really truly at its core what I was doing is those 5 fundamentals. Fundamental number 1 is that health comes from the inside. And so we have to realize that, I see the screen gave me the thumbs up there, for those who are watching, that health comes from the inside, that it's not going to come from some external source. And the sooner that we can appreciate that and recognize that our bodies were designed to be self-healing, self-regulating, and that, the idea of whatever health achievement we want has to be intrinsically mediated and driven. And so that's fundamental number 1, health comes from the inside. Fundamental number 2, the approach that we take, any approach that we take, has to be one of simplicity and consistency. And those two things are inseparably connected. That the likelihood of consistency goes way up the simpler the approach. Third is that we have to be functioning properly mechanically and chemically. Fourth is we have to be mentally, emotionally, and spiritually in tune. That means that we have to be resilient to stress and approach stress in a healthy way. And then fifth, we have to, not surprisingly, especially when it comes to losing weight or losing fat, we have to fuel ourselves properly. And so those are the 5 fundamentals that we share and teach, again, practitioners and patients. But really, at the end of the day, like, that's how I did it. Was I lived those 5 fundamentals. Now, like I said, we can get more specific in terms of the specific protocols that I did. Was there anything you wanted to add to that before we talk protocol, Dr. Wells?
No, I think that's a really good high level overview of what you did in your approach. And I just want I want the listeners not to get lost in what you're saying. Okay, so let's say you have a Zerona laser, or maybe you're a patient going to a clinic that has a Zerona laser. What we're trying to advocate here is that any approach to health, whether it's fat loss or weight loss, or reversing any chronic illness, or even performance based, those things really do apply. And so don't get lost in like just give me the protocol, give me the darn protocol. I want to know, like, how many sessions did you do and all that.
Yeah.
That's important. But what I've seen, and I think this is important. What I've seen from Chad is that he got rid of a lot of fat in his body, but it's also he's kept it off, and it also wasn't anything like there was nothing like gimmicky about what he did.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a fad diet that he was on. It wasn't anything. It was very, very foundational stuff. And mark my word, Chad will be able to maintain this. If we do this podcast a year from now, which we should, like you're going to see that he will have maintained this weight without having to like resort to medications. And this is like the opposite of what we're hearing right now when we see drugs like, semaglutide and like Mounjaro and all these drugs. This is something that Chad can do on his own without medications, without external sources. So I just don't want that to get lost in the meaning here.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Andrew, because first off, I would tell everybody listening exactly what you said. The difference between, I've lost weight before, but I've never kept it off like this. Exactly what you said, Andrew, is that this has been more so than the weight that I have lost. I am more so proud of the fact that this is something that I have been able to sustain relatively easily. It requires a little bit of effort for sure, and a little bit of a forethought, and a little bit of using the right strategy or strategies. But for me, that's the thing that I'm most proud of, is I know that I've made a real long-term positive change for myself that I know is sustainable. And that's huge for me. So let's talk specific protocols. Obviously, the Zerona was a big part of this whole process. I went through, at this point, I've probably had about 10 sessions, I think. I've lost, in terms of total inches lost. I didn't realize this, Andrew. Did you see? I had put together slides. I had lost a total of, I think, just a little over 17 inches total between chest, navel, waist, hips, and arms, and legs too. I think. No, I don't know if I measured legs or not. I'll have to go back and look. But approximately 17 inches lost, which was pretty shocking to me. I didn't realize there was that. I didn't realize there was that much to lose. But I did about 10 sessions of the Zerona. If you look at the mechanism behind lasers, the Zerona is unique in that it's got kind of two mechanisms of action that it's utilizing. Number one is the standard kind of mechanism that people associate with Erchonia lasers, in that it's giving the body energy in the form of light, photonic energy. It's using the 635 nanometer wavelength, and that's going to stimulate the mitochondria of the cells to give the body more energy. The body can then use that energy in a variety of different ways to reduce inflammation, to help signal stem cell proliferation, to help with the immune system. The other thing that they're finding now, too, a new kind of realm of this, we've done an episode with Dr. Rob Silverman here, is this idea of this laser positively impacting and affecting the gut microbiome. So that's kind of what we would consider foundational. But then one of the cool kind of side effects that was discovered, and this, we'll call it that, is that that when the 635 nanometer laser is applied to adipose tissue continuously without any sort of frequency associated with it, it's just continuous light, it will create a transitory opening or pore in the fat cell without destroying or harming or hurting the fat cell, causing the fat cells to expel the triglycerides, and causing then, as a result of that, those fat cells to shrink. And so that's, in essence, how that technology works. And so I was using that. But in addition to that, there were other things that I was doing, again, foundationally, in conjunction with that. And I would just say, the specific, if you want to call it a protocol, these were kind of the four things that really moved the needle for me. Number one, first and foremost, was proper mindset. And again, that might sound a little bit fluffy, but I will just tell you specifically exactly what I did. A lot of our thinking with this, and my thinking personally, has been heavily influenced by two books that I would recommend for anybody. We'll say three books that will help with the mindset portion of this, and even logistics. What was I going to say? The protocols. The book Atomic Habits by James Clear. He talks about this kind of infinite loop between identity and habits. He talks about how your personal identity reinforces your habits reinforce identity. Second book, Be Your Future Self Now by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Fantastic book. Just, again, reinforces a lot of the same concepts and ideas of your identity. And then the third book is a classic. It's a quick and easy read by Darren Hardy. It's called The Compound Effect. And it talks about this idea of just consistency over time. And so those three books have been a massive influence on my thinking for a long time. But in terms of mindset, what I really, really did specifically was that's been different this time, because I've known about these books and read these books long before this. But really, I think what shifted was this anchoring an identity into the future of who I wanted to become, like who and how I wanted to identify. And so I really got crystal clear on that. And I started a daily meditative practice where for 20 minutes most mornings, some as little as 10, but most mornings probably about 20 minutes. Did it this morning, just like I do most mornings, where I put on headphones, go to a nice quiet place, focus on breathing, and then I focus through a lens of gratitude. And I just focus on gratitude, and I go through a 20-minute gratitude exercise, and I focus a lot of attention and energy on being grateful for the future of what and basically the future as though it were present. And that has been huge in terms of anchoring in the right type of mindset and identity, and not focusing on the past, focusing purely on the future through the lens of gratitude. So that's mindset has been a big, big, big part of it. The second part of it, nutrition and or supplementation. I did use some supplements, nothing too terribly crazy, but if you look at the literature, a really, really simple supplement that's been proven time and time again to be very helpful is berberine. I've done berberine. Berberine helps with insulin sensitivity, and so I started doing that. The third portion is I just started moving more strategically. So specifically, I have gone to the gym most mornings. I don't care what people say about cardio or no cardio or anything like that. Or, a lot of people, especially a lot of like various social media influencers will dog on cardio and say, if you're running and doing cardio and whatnot, it's counterproductive to losing weight. I'm just telling you what worked for me was doing a little bit of cardio, nothing too significant, 10 to 20 minutes typically. And that would consist of running and or walking, and then lifting weights. And again, nothing too terribly crazy, but just doing that. But then the other strategic part of it too is walking immediately following meals. And that's something, Andrew, you want to talk about kind of your experience in Europe and what you noticed with that?
Yeah, we spent about 4 years ago, we spent a month in Italy, and we noticed at dinner time, the streets were a lot busier, not with tourists, but with locals. And maybe I'm going to butcher this word, but they call it the passeggiata, which is where you eat and then afterward you walk around. And it's nice to live in Italy when you can walk around these beautiful cities and you walk out of your apartment and you're in this gorgeous neighborhood. But we saw a lot of people just walking and socializing. So that was a big part of like the post-meal activity, just being outside and moving your body. And what the studies show is that does a lot to also help with insulin sensitivity. But obviously it burns calories, but helps you digest your food better. But it's less of a shock to your body after a big meal. And if you think of Italians, we did see a lot of like people eating bread and pasta and a lot of things that we're told here are bad for you. They were eating, and they're a relatively skinny society for the most part, thin society. But that was a big, and I found man, I started doing that as well, Chad. I actually have not been doing it as of recently in the wintertime where it's dark and cold outside. But in the summer, we started doing that at home with our boys. And it was a great post-meal activity, less post fatigue, less sleepiness. It's such an easy thing to do instead of like plop down on the couch and be on your phone or be on a screen. it's a really, really good activity. So the Italians have known this for a long, long time, and we saw that firsthand.
Yeah. And it's, again, it's a really simple way to help improve insulin sensitivity, a very natural, very, very natural way to help improve that. So walking, and that's the thing too, a lot of research now is showing walking is every bit as effective as running itself, you know, in terms of that. And so really, really healthy, helpful activity. So yeah, movement was a part of it. And then in terms of the other protocol, for me, the thing that I would say for practitioners and patients, this was probably one of the biggest game changers. I was a creature of convenience, I think, as we all are. And so my daily routine for a while there was just reaching for whatever was most convenient in terms of food. And what I finally was able to get dialed in was the habit of meal prepping. And that to me was, again, I can't overemphasize just what a profound shift this made for me in and of itself, because what meal prepping allowed me to do was shift this convenience factor to my favor, to my benefit, right? To where in meal prepping, basically what that meant for me was on Saturday, I would gather ingredients and I would make them up. Typically, it would usually be some sort of a protein with vegetables or salad, usually chicken. And I would do, and I would have that prepped and ready to go so that it was far more convenient than anything else, right? Even you could even argue more convenient than DoorDash, because at least with that, it's like I go to order something from DoorDash or Uber Eats or whatever. In the time that it takes to get that, I could have been done with my meal already. You know what I mean? It's all waiting for me in the fridge at work. And so it's like, look, it's like significantly more convenient to just do it that way. And so meal prepping was huge. And also what that allowed me to do too, and this is one of the things that I want to reiterate loud and clear, because I know that this might be a little bit controversial in some circles and whatnot, but I feel like it needs to be said because it kind of aggravates me a little bit. We live in this day and age now where people act as though calories don't matter at all, right? That argument has been kind of completely neglected and lost by the wayside. And I understand to some degree what people are talking about. Unfortunately, what they'll use is like these straw man arguments of like, well, what would you rather have, Andrew? 500 calories from a Snickers bar or 500 calories of broccoli? And it's like, well, of course, like those, I understand what you're saying there, but most people aren't overdoing it on calories with broccoli. That's just not happening, or whatever the good thing is. And so the thing I would simply say is this, without going into detail on it, we just have to understand caloric intake does matter. That's a part of the equation. And that for me was a big part of it, is that I was just eating too much and recognizing, and part of this too dives into other areas and realms too, in terms of just being more in tune with your own body. Because I think sometimes people eat and eat and eat without cueing into certain satiety signals that are there, but you've just ignored and neglected those signals for so long that you're not even in touch or in tune with your body and knowing. And so for me, that was a big part of it, is retraining and getting more familiar with my body's own signals. And part of that was just, again, reducing caloric intake on a regular basis, on a daily basis. That was huge for me. And then last but certainly not least, as we've already been talking about here, was the Zerona all along. I think the Zerona was really the kind of great equalizer. And when I use the Zerona, there's a couple things that I use to really make sure that I get the most out of it. Is number one, not doing Zerona sessions too close together. If you're going to do the Zerona, I typically was only doing it once a week. Spread out so that the body has ample time to clear and flush out via its proper drainage pathways, the triglycerides and the fat that you're losing. I would use the vibration plate in conjunction with the Zerona. I would make sure that I was moving. I would make sure that I was properly hydrating. I don't personally drink alcohol, and so that was an easy thing for me. I just kept doing what I was doing, not drinking alcohol. I also would use and have used Cellcore makes some really incredible kind of detox supplements. That's a oversimplification of it, but they have a really simple foundational protocol already built in place that'll help the body. And step one of that is all focused on energy and drainage. And so it's basically giving your body energy and then helping the body facilitate its normal, natural drainage pathways. But that was really, from a mile, or not from a mile up, but in terms of like that, those were really the biggest drivers for me that have made all the difference in the world. Anything else that I'm missing that you can see, Dr. Wells?
I think those are all the things that you did. And I want everyone listening, if you're a provider and maybe you have a Zerona or other lasers, these are all things as common sense as Dr. Woolner, the approach that Dr. Woolner used, it works. But I want you to think of ways that you can package this for patients to make it easy for them. So rather than just saying, we're just going to do the Zerona, or we're just going to do a diet program, or we're just going to do an exercise program, if you can package these fundamental things in a way that makes it accessible, easy, consistent, to make it easy to be consistent with for patients, you almost can't not see results, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so these are all things that you can package into a program to not only get better results with patients, but also to increase the value of what you're providing. You're housing this all in one thing. So not only are you going to get 10 Zerona sessions, for example, we're also going to include, meal tracking and vibe plate access and the mindset component to it, the goal part of it, the stress resiliency part of it, all these things that work for Chad. In my opinion, you should be using with patients as well, to make sure that they're developing the habits necessary to maintain this over a long period of time. So, yeah, and again, I said it before, pretty much the only thing I'm going to say on this podcast: don't overlook the foundational things, the fundamental things, because those do move the needle. And when you can package those with an amazing technology like Zerona, you're going to win with patients. Patients will see results, and it's really that simple. So the burden for us as providers is, again, to create programs and packages that make sense to patients, that are comprehensive, to make sure that they're going to win when they're buying a Zerona session or a Zerona package.
Yeah, and I would just add in the same principles and strategies apply to the Emerald laser. If you're a medical provider that's using the Emerald laser, it's no different. The strategies are going to be identical in that regard. So if you're listening and you're wondering, okay, does this work for the Emerald? Yes. The only difference is I don't own an Emerald laser, and so I haven't used it consistently. I think I've done a demo session of an Emerald. I know several Emerald practitioners who absolutely love their Emerald laser. And so same thing. And then the other thing that I will do is just kind of a quick shameless plug. If you're a practitioner listening to this and you're like, man, I could really use some help in terms of packaging and or strategizing in the way that we're talking about here, both Dr. Wells and I would invite you to come join us at an upcoming Laser MBA seminar. That stands for Marketing and Business Accelerator. And that's exactly what we teach at these seminars. Is we show you not only the marketing strategies behind how to communicate and attract patients into your practice who want help with these things, but also we show you exactly the same strategies for packaging things, exactly what Andrew said, so that instead of just offering the laser, which it's powerful as a standalone, it's incredible, but to be able to package it in a far more comprehensive way to really further help serve your patients and help solve the problems that they're in your clinic for. So come join us at an upcoming Laser MBA. You should be able to find dates and times. I don't know by the time you get a hold of this episode and listen to it where things will be in terms of the schedule. But if you go to Erchonia's website under the events tab, you should be able to see when our next upcoming seminar is. I think at the date that we're recording this, the next one we have scheduled is going to be in March in Minnesota. I believe, is that right, Andrew?
It is.
So, but yeah, we'd love to have you join us at an upcoming MBA. It'd be a ton of fun to have you there with us. These are really enjoyable seminars, and we try and make them as value-packed as possible to help you. So that's all I got. Anything final thoughts, Andrew?
Yeah, we're happy for you, Dr. Woolner, that you were able to do this. And, it's great to see. It's great. Not that we didn't love you when you were 200 pounds. It's less that we love now, but we're happy that you are, in the crazy busy world that you live in. Happy that you're taking care of yourself better than you were before. And it's been really amazing to see your transformation. I've, quite a few people barely recognized you from where you were to where you are right now. And it's great to see that you're doing it in a very healthy, holistic, and sustainable way. So couldn't be more proud of you, my man. And keep up the good work.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Appreciate it. And the thing I would just say in closing for me is just a huge shout out to the folks at Erchonia. Can't say enough good things about them and the amazing products and tools that they make for us as practitioners and for the patients. I have just seen so many times firsthand how the lasers that they produce change people's lives, my own included, my family included. And so appreciate everything that Erchonia does. Can't say enough good things about this company from head to toe. They are just amazing. And and I fully believe in what they are doing, again, because I've lived it myself and seen the results. And so thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. And thanks for listening, everybody. Hope that this has been a useful and valuable episode for you. And we'd love to be able to help you further. Like we said, come join us at an upcoming event, and we'll talk to you guys on the next episode. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to the Laser Light Show. Be sure to subscribe and give us a review. If you're interested in learning more about Erchonia lasers, just head on over to Erchonia.com. There you'll find a ton of useful resources, including research, news, and links to upcoming live events, as well as Erchonia's e-community, where you can access for free additional resources, including advanced training and business tools. Again, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.